All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. So welcome to another edition of In the News. Let's just jump right into it. I want to start out with Kobe Bryant. And I have to say, when I first initially found out about everything that had happened, I feel like my response was that of many other people's. Just complete, utter shock. You know what I mean? Something where it's just so unexpected, you don't even know how to receive the information. And so when I found out, I was literally driving and I was at a red light and then my phone did a little ding. And so I did like a quick glance and put my phone down and kept driving because I didn't even realize what I had just read. My eyes, sometimes you kind of like glance at something, you don't even see what it really said. You just like, okay. I thought it said something about Kobe crashing a party with the helicopter. I'm like, oh, okay, it's the Grammys tonight. Kobe, he done did a grand entrance and, he's hanging out with all the music elite and everything. Okay, cool, I'll check that out later. And so it wasn't until I got home and when I looked at my phone again and I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't, whoa. That like literally, it took a minute to just kind of piece it all together. And the thing about it is, in addition to it already being sad, I just think it's a different kind of hurt when it's something that wasn't even foreseeable. It's different when celebrities reach a certain age, and they're in their 80s and their 90s, and they've lived a full life, and they've been able to do everything they've wanted to do, and then, their time comes, and you find out, and you're still sad, but it's a different kind of sad, as opposed to when somebody just goes out so unexpectedly, and the way that it happened, as far as just the crash, and then the daughter was there with him, and then you start thinking about what were those last few seconds like, and then you start thinking about the other people who were also on the helicopter and how that affected the families, and was he on the way to the game for the kids, and just, I was like, man, that was a lot. That was absolutely horrible. I feel so bad for everybody who's been affected by that, all the family members. I'm thinking about his kids. I'm even thinking about the wife, just the experience of losing a spouse and a child in the same token. That, I don't know how people are able to bounce back from things like that, because that's the experience of a lot of people, and I will always have a place in my heart for people who experience something so tragic. Because at least some people were talking about how do you move on, and I'm like, I don't even think that's the conversation to have at this moment. I think you have to give people time to grieve, and like something like that is so unexpected, and there's no one size fits all when it comes to grieving, especially when it's a spouse or your own child or even a parent or a friend. There's no rule book on how this all works. And this kind of goes back to what I said in the last live video we did, and this is when we were talking about the Juice WRLD guy, and I was talking about this quote I saw. It was a really good quote where it was talking about the reason it hurts so bad when you lose somebody that, either you love or you admire, or somebody who is a part of your life, is because like each and every person you have a specific love for, a love that is only specifically for them. And you give it, and there's this balance of just completion. And so when a person passes on and now you have nowhere to give that love to, it just kind of sits just, kind of just discombobulated within your emotions. And so there's a hurt that's there because you can no longer give that love to that person. And I think that's what you're seeing as far as how the world has responded, because you're seeing not just the fans and the family, but even when you're looking at some of his colleagues in the league, the images of seeing all of these players, at the games, just choked up, teared up, is like, man, that's a hard watch. And the first thing I thought of was, it made me think back to when Isaiah Thomas lost his sister and he still had to play that game. And then you saw like Avery Bradley, supporting him. I was like, that one hurt my heart. That was hard to watch. Plus, like, all of us are from the same area. Like, me and Isaiah Thomas went to like rival high schools, and then Avery Bradley and I grew up in the same church. So like, I don't know them that well, but I could feel that energy because I remember like the sister and everything. Like that's some crazy stuff. But watching all those players, just, man, that was a hurt. And one of the things I kind of felt some kind of way about was I didn't know how to receive it, and maybe y'all can share your opinion on this. At first, I didn't like the idea of them panning the cameras to all these different players who were crying about what had happened, because I'm like, let people grieve and don't exploit how they grieve. But then at the same time, I was like, maybe this is a way to kind of show people that everybody is human and people have emotions, especially when we talk about when you're raising up young men, and young men are always raised to not cry and, ball up your emotion and tough it out and be a man and suck it up. And I think this kind of gives a revelation that, yes, even some of your biggest heroes and some of the athletes that you look up to, they're human. They have emotions, and it's okay to cry, and it's okay to let out things, because it's not good to keep all of that energy in, because next thing you know, you're punching walls and got all kind of other problems. But, I mean, it's a lot. It's such a tough story to follow. Like, it just messed up my whole day. Even today was somber, you know what I mean? Really, really sad. And I think what also makes it sad is like Kobe was definitely going to like this new chapter of his life where he was very community oriented, and he started doing all of these different, really great works and everything. And it's like, man, he had so much more that he was gonna do. And I keep thinking about that daughter, like that. I think that's hard. And I keep thinking about the siblings, and just everybody affected by that, the family members, everybody who was on that helicopter. Like, who would have known that would be their last moments? Which is one of the reasons why I've been on this journey to try to rekindle and like fix maybe relationships that didn't end well. And this is not saying go back and get back with the abusive person that didn't treat you right, or go back to that toxic friendship or that toxic relationship. But I'm talking about moments where you fell out with somebody over something petty. Like, I don't know, y'all are putting together a surprise party and the logistics weren't together, so y'all ain't talked in 5 months. Stuff like that. I've been on this journey to kind of rebuild and repatch with anybody that maybe I've fallen out with, or maybe I just, not even fallen out with, but just didn't have communication with. Like, the first thing I did as soon as I realized the bit with Kobe had happened, the first thing I did was call my grandpa, just because my grandfather's 85, so every day that he's still here is like a blessing. So I was like, let me embrace and live in this moment. Oh man, I will tell you one of the beefs I did have though. One of the things I didn't like is I always call it like the grievance police, where people go, and if there's somebody who's a public figure that passes away, there's people who go and they follow other people who may have had some kind of correlation or some kind of relationship with that person, and they monitor their social media, and they say, how come you haven't said anything about this person yet, or how come you haven't done this? And I'm like, man, you got to let people mourn and grieve in their own way. I saw so many people harassing LeBron James for some reason, and I'm like, let the dude, like, first of all, social media is not the go-to thing for everybody anyway. For people who live in some spaces, their first thought when something tragic happens isn't, let me run to Instagram and make a post. Let me run to Twitter and talk about it. Let me go live and say my 2 cents. Everybody doesn't operate that way, and everybody doesn't use social media as their go-to for everything. And again, when it comes to mourning, or when it comes to you losing somebody that you respect or that you've had some kind of relationship with, or just anybody who's impacted your life, let people have their moment to just process everything. Everybody isn't always ready to talk. Everybody isn't always ready to just go out there and be in front of cameras. That's a lot. One of the things I was hoping is I pray the media leaves Kobe's family alone. Just leave them alone, because we've seen how so many celebrities get exploited, or even the family of celebrities get exploited when things happen. And I kept thinking about when Michael Jackson died. And I remember one of the things, paparazzi, they were trying to get Janet so bad because apparently around the time that everything happened, she was still on a plane. They were doing the movie, the Why Did I Get Married? And I think they had just wrapped up the airport scene, so she was already on the plane. So people didn't even know if she knew, and some were speculating, oh, well, she's going to find out when they land, because this is 2009. So technology was a little different. Everybody might not have had internet service 30,000 feet up. And I remember the paparazzi were so pressed to chase her down that as soon as her limo got to the hospital or to the morgue, wherever they went to, there's like this paparazzi shot of them getting her as they're opening the limo door just to see, if she's crying or not. I'm like, y'all are ruthless out here. And then there's like, I saw other things where allegedly there may have been a video of the incident and people were sharing it. I'm like, why would you do that? That's a horrible, there's almost like not even a respect for the plight of other people's, turmoil. And the reports that I read about the family finding out through TMZ, because of course information got leaked somehow. I'm like, everybody's doing this whole humanity thing wrong. Society just has it wrong. Absolute shock. I'm still taking that in. It just messed up my whole Sunday. My thought process was all over the place. I was going to do a video on this yesterday, but I was like, let me just take a day. Like, man. So, really sad. Really, really sad. But I'm loving the support and the acknowledgement of just his impact. I'm enjoying seeing all of that. But that's tough. So condolences to the family. That's a lot. That really is a lot. When I tell you that they really came out of nowhere, I wasn't ready for that one. But best wishes to the family. It's his kids too. I keep thinking of the kids. That's who I keep thinking about each and every time. Like, man, but we'll see how everything unfolds. But again, like you just never know. Like, you really never know when that last moment is there. And like I said, all of us have a reservation at the cemetery. So it's pretty much about like what it is. How do you impact society, and what is your mark, amongst the masses when your time comes. But, anyway, let us move on. And then as far as the Grammys, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't really pressed to watch, just because there was already enough going on with the Grammys as far as the allegations about them rigging a lot of the votes and the winners and the nominations and how backwards the process is. And so you had that going on. And then with, again, the bit with Kobe, I was checked out. But I did make sure to try to go in and look at all the performances this morning, like online, and read up on who the winners were. As far as the performances, one of the things I think I figured out as far as why it's harder these days to watch something like the AMAs or the Grammys or the Billboard Awards is because you're not getting a whole lot of anything that stands out anymore. You get a lot of performances that are all right. And all right isn't bad, but when you have to sit through all right for 3 hours, it's like you check out. And don't get me wrong, there were some performances that I thought were decent in the mix, but I was like, maybe that's why I'm not as into the shows as much anymore, at least those specific award shows. But there were some moments that I still did enjoy. Usher's Prince tribute I thought was okay. I think Prince is a hard person to capture the essence of as an artist because Prince had so many layers to his artistry. I thought Usher sounded really great vocally. I didn't quite get a Prince vibe, even with him in the decor and everything. And like I said, vocally he sounded good. There was just something different, and I think it goes back to what I was saying, where it's like Prince is just so unique that I don't think you can capture his essence with one person. And I think the BET Awards got it right in 2016, where they pretty much dedicated the entire show. I know the Grammys is putting together a special that comes out in April where they will do something similar, but I think the BET Awards in 2016 just had it together because they had so many different artists that captured so many different elements of an artist like Prince. So Erykah Badu did her thing, and so if there was an element Erykah Badu couldn't catch, it didn't matter because Bilal was going to do his performance, and if there was something he couldn't catch, it was fine because Janelle Monáe was going to do a medley, and if there was something she couldn't do, it was fine because Stevie Wonder and Tori Kelly had their piece, and I'm skipping some people, and Maxwell had his piece, and Sheila E. did her piece, and Jennifer Hudson did hers, and so that was a really great night because you saw just how different Prince can be interpreted as an artist and how people receive his music. So I think that might have had to be the route that could have made a Prince tribute work at the Grammys. But I do commend Usher because I think he did very well, especially vocally. He definitely carried it well. And Sheila E. looked really good on the drums and everything. And even the FKA Twigs, I didn't even realize that was her because they announced her, so I was waiting for her to come out and sing. And they just were like, no, you're just going to dance tonight. I was like, oh, okay. But I thought it was enjoyable. I liked Tyler, the Creator's performance. A lot of people thought it was a little weird and demonic. I guess the thing that I liked about Tyler, especially now that I've seen him live in concert, I think after you see him live in concert, it's like you have a different appreciation for him as a live performer because his concerts are just something where you can't even explain what you just witnessed. It's just that different. And it goes back to what I was saying as far as sometimes the award shows give you too much of just all right. I think Tyler stood out because it was so different from what everybody else was doing that night. And so I enjoyed his. And again, like I think with award shows, you definitely got to mix it up a bit. Like I always give kudos to like the 2009 VMAs because I thought they had the perfect blend of just a little bit of everything. That was the year where you had Jay-Z and Alicia. They did like the Empire State of Mind. That's when Lil Mama went on the stage. That's the year they did the Michael Jackson tribute with Janet. Like Michael had just passed. Beyonce had did Single Ladies that year. That's the same year with Kanye and Taylor Swift. Kid Cudi was part of the house band. Wale, Solange, and UCB. Like UCB for those of you in DC who like go-go. They were one of the house bands. I think Katy Perry had did something. They had Pink hanging from the ceiling flying. I didn't even know who Lady Gaga was at the time, but I knew by the time she got off the stage with the blood coming out of her costume, I was like, what did I just watch? I don't know what I just watched, but it was different, and it was enjoyable to witness. Green Day had did their thing, and so that was a really interesting year because there was a little bit of everything. I think like the Grammys and stuff, they're gonna have to mix it up a little bit just with some of the performances because you get too much of the same thing. 3.5 hours is too long to be holding people hostage. Lizzo I thought was okay, and again going back to Tyler's, what I liked with Tyler's, I really enjoyed bringing out Charlie Wilson and Boyz II Men. I thought that was great. I thought that was enjoyable as well when they did the Kobe tribute with Boyz II Men because Wanye just started hitting that note. I was like, go ahead, kill it. He was tearing that note up, wasn't he? But overall, and I read some of the list of the winners, and so I was like, congrats to Anderson .Paak. That's one of my favorite entertainers out right now. I wish they would have let him perform. He definitely would have killed it. Like, put him on the stage, man. So Anderson .Paak, and like he has a really great band too. Like when him and the Free Nationals do their thing, it's a really great show. PJ Morton had won an R&B Grammy, so good for him. I think they said Beyonce won for the Coachella show. Even Gloria Gaynor, who, if you remember, that's the woman who sang the I Will Survive song. She has like a gospel album or something out, so she won for that. Lizzo won a few awards. It was weird. They didn't give one to, what's her name? The Ariana Grande girl. I thought she would have got one because she definitely had a big year for the pop side, but I guess they gave all of them to, was it Billie Eilish? I still don't really know her music like that. But, apparently she had a big night, so I'll kind of go back and see what it is she has to offer. She's really young, too. So, and J. Cole finally has one. Finally. So, interesting night. Grammys overall, I thought were okay from what I was able to see. But yeah, I just think the element of Kobe it was just gloom and doom for me to sit through that. Something about the Grammys just has an eerie feel between that and the time when Whitney Houston died the day before. Something just with their Grammys throws me off now. But anyway, moving on. And then there's Terry Crews, and I'm looking at that whole situation just like, why? Just like when Burger King changed their fries. Why? Now them things nasty. They don't be seasoned right. I don't like them. But do better. If you didn't know the backstory, Terry Crews is the current host of America's Got Talent, and Gabrielle Union was a judge on the show. However, she was not invited to return for this current season. And so after the announcement of her departure, because whenever they get rid of somebody, they give a very nice diplomatic response and we've chosen to go in a new direction and we wish them well and so on and so forth. So a lot of people started asking questions like, well, wait a minute, why'd they get rid of her? Because there were some good things that came out of her being on the show, and the biggest pro was that social media engagement skyrocketed to levels that had never been there before with her being on the show. And so people were like, well, what happened? And then out of nowhere come these allegations about different practices behind the scenes that were discriminatory in regards to race and sex and things that were questionable. And so Gabrielle Union's team has never actually come out, Gabrielle Union as well, have never come out and officially said this, and that happened. But reports have come out about her making, some complaints to HR about some racist things that were said and a few other bits and pieces like that. And she also has not denied any of the statements that have been put out there. And there's also been a lot of people who've come and given her support, including her husband. So there's lots of pretty much, iterating that something has happened, but not really being concrete about what it is. And I think really what that's about is Gabrielle Union knows that she is in a game where the cards are stacked against her as a black woman in this industry. So she's being very diplomatic and meticulous about how she's going about it. So anyway, there's that piece. So these speculations and these conversations have been going on for a few weeks about why they got rid of the black girl from this show, long story short. And so then you have Terry Crews, who goes on the Today Show recently. And of course, they're going to ask him about this. And so in this moment, Terry Crews had a choice. It was either, kind of brush the question off and say, or answer it. And so, pretty much he gives this response where it's, he said, well, I can't speak for the sexism because I'm not a woman, but in regards to the discrimination and racism thing, I haven't seen it, I haven't experienced it. As a matter of fact, this has been one of the best experiences I've ever had, and this is one of the most diverse, environments I've been in 10 years, and this is just, he goes about how NBC and America's Got Talent, they're the epitome of diversity. He goes on this tangent for 2-3 minutes about everything. And so a lot of people were like, why would you go and pretty much everything you're doing literally works against what it is Gabrielle Union is experiencing? And long story short, he says this line about, his wife had said, well, did Gabrielle Union say something? So why should you? And so he's like, I'm just going to go by what my wife said. And it's like, but okay, if you were claiming that you weren't going to say anything, you just said a lot. And it just also doesn't look good because, again, a lot of people on social media were saying, well, you know what? It's funny because when you made these allegations about the guy groping you and half the world laughed at you because they were like, the optics just, people couldn't put the optics together. They're like, wait a minute. You're this big old 300-pound dude and you mean to tell me you let somebody come in and grab you in the genitals and you didn't break him in half? And a lot of people were saying, yeah, man up. That was kind of the verbiage that was put out there. Literally, he acknowledges that the only people who really had his back in that were black women. So he gives a shout, and this was last year, according to his Twitter. He gives a shout out to Shonda Rhimes, Gabrielle Union, Nia Long, and some others. And so a lot of people are like, wow, she went out on a limb and had your back in your situation. And even if you didn't want to speak on her behalf, it's interesting that you were so quick to go and tear her down. And so he goes again, and his response to all of the backlash that he got was this tweet that he tweeted earlier that says, there's only one woman on earth I have to please. Her name is Rebecca. Not my mother, my sister, my daughters, or co-workers. I will let their husbands / boyfriends / partners take care of them. Rebecca gives me wings. And it's like, wow. Okay, so here's my 2 cents on everything. Literally, if he didn't want to say anything, he had the option to do so. All he had to do was say, it's a very complex conversation, and I'm just not in the capacity to have it at the moment. And boom. people would have still kind of looked at him sideways like, oh, you're not going to say nothing, but people would have understood. And it's different than going in the realm of not only denying whatever happened, but then going on this whole spill about how great the network is. And you also have to be honest, like the Today Show is an NBC show. So imagine what it looked like. I think he recognizes that he could kind of mess up his career if he says the wrong thing, but it's like also, what is the expectation that NBC is going to hold NBC accountable for what NBC does? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like when you have those police brutality cases and then there's an investigation, but it's not independent of the police force. It's like, yeah, we investigated ourselves. We found out we did nothing wrong. So that's kind of the optics of an NBC show asking about some discriminatory practices that happened on an NBC show while on an NBC show. It just, it doesn't quite work out that way. And so again, it's kind of like, listen, you could have just gotten out of the way, because the thing is like this, it's also a conversation about him turning something that really is a structural issue, because when we can talk about Hollywood and the music industry and how black people are already left out of the equation in a lot of instances, especially when you add in the element of black women, the conversation gets even more complex, and we know it's structural, we know it exists, and there's no denying it. So by him going and turning something that is, it's the remnants of a structural issue and making it an individual experience and using his individual experience to justify why the rebuttal of anything that has been alleged around Gabrielle Union, the rebuttal of it, it's like it just doesn't look right. And on top of that, like, even a bit as far as what he said about the wife, I could almost understand that argument, but that argument doesn't align with the context of this conversation. I think sometimes when people are having those family dynamics and that family breakdown where there's some issues about the wife versus this and that conversation he's having as far as my wife is my first priority, that conversation could almost fit with the family drama dynamics. It doesn't fit with the context of this conversation. And then it's like, okay, so the mom's thrown under the bus, the daughters, everybody, y'all just all on your own. It's just about you and your wing, huh? Okay, I'm like, yeah, not to ever put any ill will towards anybody's marriage, but like, imagine what it would be like if she says, I don't want to be in a marriage anymore, and you've alienated everybody for your wing, and now, yeah, so you want them alimony checks now you got to work a Wingstop. Like, just, anyway, but that's another part of the conversation. But again, I just think, like, Terry, sometimes, like, if you really didn't have the range to carry the conversation, you should have left it alone. And I think his ego and pride got in the way, and he just dug himself even deeper, because the controversy and the backlash from his Today Show interview would have eventually gone away, but he just had to hound down on it even more. And again, it's disappointing, because going back, it's like, okay, you had people go out on a limb to kind of back you when you felt some kind of way about something that happened to you. Gabrielle Union could have said, well, that ain't happened to me, so it doesn't exist. It is what it is. It's kind of like, even when you talk like racism or anything like that. And the perfect example is, especially in these conversations around police brutality and how we've seen so many unarmed people be shot and killed by police. It's almost like when you go and you get somebody else who is like, oh, well, I got pulled over and I had a great experience. Okay, you had a great experience, but it doesn't negate that there's still a larger problem. Just because individually it didn't happen to you, structurally it's still backed by the way that society operates. So that's the issue there. And again, can we also talk optics? Let's get a little deeper. In my personal opinion, when you're talking about the specific audience that something like America's Got Talent has at the moment, and specifically what it is that NBC was pushing for, Terry Crews has more leverage with white Americans than Gabrielle Union as a collective. That's just the way it is. Based on the movies that have been given to Gabrielle Union and the fact that she also has opinions and she likes to share how she feels, the black woman who has an opinion about police brutality and race and exclusion and some of the flaws of Hollywood, because she definitely calls out Hollywood with what they do with black films and distribution and everything like that, in comparison to Terry Crews, who's the fun guy. He's the fun big black guy that just gets along with everybody. He doesn't talk race. He doesn't talk politics. He's never going to shake the table. He wants to be everybody's friend. He's the black guy in the picture. He's the fun one. He's fun. Of course, the leverage that he has is always going to overshadow and overshine anything that Gabrielle Union has. So when you're talking the optics of him going on a show like the Today Show, which would most likely have the same viewer demographic as a show like America's Got Talent, of course, getting the bright, bubbly, big black guy that everybody gets along with to pretty much rebuttal and refute what the angry black woman says, of course, is going to be, okay, yep, all right, so that negates anything she says. We knew she was crazy. Plus, when you talk about, like, just, again, that conversation of leverage and how America would see both of those individuals, Somebody like Gabrielle Union is well known and respected within the black community as far as her works in film and television. As far as what white people have seen from her, she's often given a role where she got attitude. Like, whether that's when she was a teenager, and remember she was on Seventh Heaven, and then it was like this race episode where her father's church got burned down, so she had attitude the whole show. Or even, what's the cheerleader movie she was in? The Bring It On movie, where literally the movie is told from the lens of rich white girls who went and stole these cheerleading routines from the black girls that lived over in Compton. And so the way that the movie's portrayed is it's these girls who they had no idea it was happening, and so they tried to do the right thing, because the hood team over in Compton didn't have enough money to get into the competition. We tried to give them a check, and Gabrielle Union ripped it up, and they showed up to the football game ready to fight, and she was just so nasty and so rude to us. And the way that the movie is presented, even though it's entertaining, the movie is presented in a way where the viewer will root for the rich girls that were from whatever part of California they were from to win against the girls over from Compton. And the way that it's presented as if the girls from the wealthier schools, they're supposed to win. It's entitled to them. They deserve it. And so it negates and erases everything that happened to, the girls over from Compton and everything like that. And so that's the image that people have about somebody like a Gabrielle Union from the collective of white America from that lens. That's how they see her. So it's not too far off to say, okay, yeah, she was probably shaking the table too much over it. America's Got Talent. She was getting on their nerves. So yeah, she's got to go. She doesn't know how to be one of the good ones. In comparison to Terry Crews, who... he's a good one. He doesn't say anything. He's just happy to be here. And so, again, listening to him say, well, that didn't happen to me. This is the best experience I ever had. It's like, you should have just... because you're saying that, my wife told me not to say anything, but you went and opened your mouth and said a whole lot. And then even a bit with the wife. It's like, literally, you're using your wife as the shield for what you just said. Because now all the anger is going to the wife. Everybody looking at her like, what? And oh, that's how you feel, huh? And he's hiding behind that. And well, she said it. And she's the only one I gotta please anyway. She's my wing. All right, well, fly on away then. If that's what you want to do. Sometimes, like, it's okay to understand that, maybe you don't want to carry that conversation, or maybe he didn't experience that. I'm not gonna take that from him, but don't get in the way of what she has going with her team. Don't get in the way of something else. Again, it's kind of like that same police brutality conversation. If people are saying, hey, this is happening and the numbers are there and black men are 21% or 21 times more likely to be shot and killed by a police than a white person, and so on and so forth, and then you say, well, I'm black and it ain't happened to me, so it must not be a problem that I didn't experience. Again, that's your individual experience that you're trying to compare to a structural pattern that we're seeing. So with Terry Crews, it's just like, come on, do better. I get it. He's trying to keep his good little job and everything like that. I guess I get it. But again, you can't individually assess something that's structural, because again, the issues that exist in Hollywood and in the music industry, it's bigger than just a few people. It's a whole system in operation that just runs through a bunch of craziness. All right. So like, do better. Next time, just if you don't have the range for the conversation, just don't say nothing. Don't say anything. Like, I don't think he understood the optics of all that. And if we've had that conversation too before, like integrity versus wealth, how some people are just not willing to risk that dollar because they want to keep their families supported. And I get it to an extent, but if that's the lane you want to be in, stay in that lane and don't dip and dab over in one and then run back to yours each time. Like, don't do damage to this one and then run back to yours and be in your safety net and then watch from the sidelines. And then do this whole boast about, well, it's just me and my wife, and we a team of one, we Bonnie and Clyde now. Okay, you about that life now, but just literally a year and a half ago, when people were criticizing you about the groping situation and nobody was in your corner except other black women, just keep that same energy. Keep that same energy. That's all I'm saying. Like, terrible. I want to talk about this next story because it mirrors a larger problem that's happening globally. It's happening within the United States all over, but it's also happening globally. But I want to center it on this story just to prove a little point here. Houston, Texas, there is a report that's come out that's stating that 43% of the families that live in Houston's 5th Ward have some sort of a cancer diagnosis. 43%. That's actually extremely high. So what I want to do is I want to read a little bit of this article and then we'll chat. According to data from the city of Houston, the 5th Ward residents are 48% black, 46% Latino, 4% white. Most households survive on less than $25,000 a year. The residents live on houses built over land contaminated by creosote, a carcinogen used to treat wood railroad ties. The community is close to Englewood Rail Yard. The creosote most likely seeped into the soil and infected the groundwater. Residents also blame the shuttered Liberty Road site, which is owned by Union Pacific. Brenda Main Warren or Waring, Union Pacific Assistant Vice President for Public Affairs, brushed off the findings. She said, "There are no violations at this site. We've been studying this site for 20 years. We've owned it, and it was studied before that. And the science and the research shows there's no pathway for the impacted materials to get to the residents." She suggested residents might be endangering themselves by building wells. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I'll post the link to the argument as well in the description. Again, doesn't this almost just sound like what we talked about where somebody investigates themselves? We've been doing a study. We ain't seen nothing wrong, so I don't see what the problem is. What I almost want to do too, like I wonder where redlining comes into play. Like for anybody who lives in the area, like if anybody has research on the backstory of how everything was created as far as the zoning and who was allowed to live where and when, you know, the different plants were built, if you have that information, please send it my way. Just send it to calvinbmichaels@gmail.com. But again, like this is a cycle that you're seeing where in areas where the wealth is not always there, you constantly see corporations move in and they build these, you know, these mines and these factories and these plants and these quarries, and there's all kind of toxins and chemicals that get into the water or in the soil or in the air, and people end up getting sick. And later down the line, after so many people have died and been, you know, victims, then finally there's some kind of settlement, and at that point the settlement doesn't even give its just due to those who really were affected. Like absolutely crazy. And the first thing I thought of when I read this was Flint. Of course, because even when you talk about the Flint water crisis, that's still going on. And again, I have links in my description about where you can support those in Flint. Again, that is all about corporate greed. Like literally when you talk about the backstory of Flint, and literally somebody up top was just like, hey, I got a friend that has a company and the company needs some new business. Let's start a new project. And as a result of that new project starting, they changed the water source and go from, you know, one river to the Flint River, which is contaminated with all of this waste and everything else from all the plants and so on and so forth. And we fast forward, and now you have people that have lesions on their skin and their cancer rates are up, and people are having birth defects and lead poisoning, which again, the effects of lead poisoning are irreversible, especially in children, and it's playing a role into the behavioral patterns of a lot of the children who are in the schools. And the saddest aspect is because Flint, unfortunately, is a city that does not have a lot of wealth, a lot of people are stuck in their predicament where they can't even get out, where, you know, it's really down in the dumps. And this is the result of when you have some cities that were booming in the industrial age, but as the industrial age kind of fizzled out and we went into more of a technological state or a tech savvy country, and a country built around the ideas of like commerce and money and banking. So pretty much tech and banking is where we're at in these times. And those cities that were, you know, big booming industrial plant cities are all struggling. So like a Richmond, California, even though they still have like the pier and everything, or pretty much like a Flint or a bunch of other areas in some places in Ohio and places in Pennsylvania and even West Virginia, where now you see some of these industries kind of literally failing. The money's not in the area anymore, and the investment is not there for the people. And so corporations continue to move in, and they don't want to make up for any ills that they may have done to the people. And a lot of times there's all kind of things that have been done over the span of 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. And because the people didn't have the wealth to go and get proper representation and get studies and investigations, they continue to be exploited, and they continue to be victims of a larger problem. And so it's absolutely ridiculous. And so, you know, it goes on and it goes on. So I'm going to go and do my little research because I want to see where redlining comes into play with this. And, you know, we've talked redlining before. Redlining was pretty much a housing discriminatory practice that was practiced, and it pretty much mapped out the layout of how literally every major metropolitan American city is pretty much constructed as far as who was allowed to live where in regards to race. So I do want to follow that story, but that's absolutely crazy. And again, with something like that, it's even more scarier when you can't figure out where the origin of the problem is coming from, and the company's saying, oh, it ain't us, it's you know, they're digging wells over there, that's why they all sick. And I'm like, yeah, because the whole town is drinking out the well, huh? Okay, anyway, also I'm hoping for the best to those who are affected by these large swarms of locusts that have been hitting northeastern and eastern Africa over the past few days. I'm about to actually post a visual on the side, so for those of you who, you know, you get uneasy at the sight of a lot of bugs and everything like that, please click the description, find the timestamp, and jump to the next story so that it doesn't really just make you uncomfortable. And I'm posting it right now, so go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, like, you know, the scary thing with this is because these swarms are so massive, and sometimes these swarms can be as wide as like a 60-mile radius, they literally just eat and destroy everything in sight. And what happens is it leads to, the destruction of crops and everything like that. Sometimes it's led to famine. And it can be a very scary sight. Like, I would hate to be in that. Like, I was just thinking, like, imagine your mom sending you to go dump the trash and all that's going on outside. Like, that takes me back to being little. And I don't know if you guys had this experience, but for people who used to have satellite TV, like in the 90s, when you'd have that big giant satellite in the yard, but all the TVs had to watch what was on the satellite. I just remember being a kid, like 5 or 6, and my parents would always forget to go bring the satellite remote from downstairs upstairs to their bedroom, and then they'd go try to send me to downstairs to go get it, and I'm like 5 or 6. And mind you, it would always be after we watched like Unsolved Mysteries or America's Most Wanted or something that would have me scared to go downstairs at night with all the lights off, and they'd go get the remote, and I'm like, what? Like, when I tell you I used to sprint down them stairs, like, that's probably why I ended up being good at track, because I could jump over like 8 stairs at a time and run back up. Like, I was shook getting it. But back to a more serious note, that it's a very scary sight. And like, looking at that, it's like, how do you even, there's literally nothing you can do. You literally just have to wait for the swarm to come and go. Like, you can't get a blowtorch and just start hitting everything because there's too many of them. And so it's sad because it devastates so many people. So I'm hoping that that region is able to recover, and that, it doesn't play a larger role into like the demise of any groups of people or anything like that. Because again, like, sometimes when these swarms come, they just do so much damage. And it doesn't just happen in that region. It happens all over parts of Asia as well. But like, absolutely crazy. Like, And then this coronavirus thing, I'm like, dang, man, how come every few years there's always some older new virus that reemerges and spreads and everybody's in a state of paranoia? Like, there's always something that just pops up. I'm like, well, what was the initial trigger? Where did it come from? You know what I mean? And so it's like, whether it's bird flu or swine flu, SARS, anthrax, mad cow disease, it's just always kind of something that always pops up and reemerges. And they're saying with this one, you can contract it from like hand-to-hand contact, or if somebody coughs or sneezes and doesn't cover up, their mouth and all. I'm like, this too much. This would be the worst time to get on a plane right now. You know what I mean? Because I always think of being on a plane and that compressed air just circulating with 150 people just circulating for 2-3 hours. I'm like, nope, can't do it. So that's why I'm like, folks, wash your hands, please. Wash your hands. You know what I mean? Like, just to wash your hands, carry some hand sanitizer, do something. And well, actually, from what I've learned, hand sanitizer only covers the germs. Or it kills them, but it just covers the issue. You actually really got to wash your hands. But still, like, man, I just want to live and mind my business. You know what I mean? That's why I always be looking at people crazy when they be having like their pets and stuff. Because they were saying that the origin probably comes from a bunch of different animals and stuff over with some of the things they're doing in Southeast Asia, allegedly. And so I'm like, that's why I'm always looking at people crazy when they be having like the cat walking on the kitchen counter while they're cooking, or even sometimes you see people, they'll get in the tub with their dog. I'm like, nope, And sometimes the whole family get in. Everybody get in. And the dog just wagging and splashing. I'm like, nah, And I love animals, but there's a limit to my love. Can't do it. I just want to mind my business and be left alone and be happy, man. There's always some crazy stuff we got to think about. Like 2020 is doing a number on us, ain't it? Between that Iran stuff where half of us thought we were about to die like 2 weeks ago. And now you got this thing with Kobe going on. You got this virus going on. I'm sure that Turkey's still having earthquakes. Like, Turkey is just, I don't know. Every time I turn on the news, they have an earthquake all the time. I feel bad for the people that live there, because it's like, dang, every time I turn on the news, and they have the big ones too. It's always an earthquake way over like a magnitude 6.5. It'd be 6.5 on a Monday, 7.2 Tuesday. I'm like, geez. Like, I always say, people who do not live in areas that have a lot of seismic activity, y'all are blessed, because I think that's such a traumatizing experience. And we've talked about earthquakes before, but I just, boy. Anyway, moving on. I did want to say, I forgot to share this with you guys. I did post it in my community section, but for those of you who do follow, like, I guess my music and everything, my album did get nominated for a Washington Area Music Award for Best R&B Album. So for those of you who live in the DMV, who listened to it and liked it or agree that it's a really great album and you want to support it, you actually can go to their website and vote. The ceremony, I believe, is in March, but I think voting ends on January 31st. And from what I've read, they take into consideration voting from the public, and then they have a panel of judges that actually go in and make the final decision, but they do consider what the votes kind of put out there. So hey, for those of you who would like to support, go ahead and do your thing. And I think you have to create an account. I think you can just log in through your Facebook if you still do Facebook. I know Facebook been tripping, so a lot of people have moved on, but you can also use an email. So yeah, if you want to support me, go right ahead. I will not fight you. It will be greatly appreciated. That's actually the very first nomination I've ever had for anything related to my music, so that's pretty cool as well. And so I'll give you the updates with that as it goes along. I don't know if I'm going to win or anything. It seems like a pretty nice list of artists that are in that category as well. I went and followed up with all the other artists who are nominated with me. It's pretty cool. And so it's a really diverse group of artists. So really cool. Kudos to everybody in that category. And then I also forgot to share with you guys, so I took my godmother. Like I told y'all, I'm on this journey where I want to go and see literally all of the older seasoned performers while I still can. And so my godmother is a huge Diana Ross fan, and I don't really follow Diana Ross like that. But I bought her tickets for her birthday, and she wanted me to go with her, so I went, and it was actually a very great show. Like she performed it at the Kennedy Center, and it was the National Symphony Orchestra, so it was the same orchestra that was there when I told you I saw Maxwell like a few months ago. And so Diana came and she did her Diana thing with the big giant gowns and these dresses and things that have all kind of feather, look like she went and robbed a zoo or robbed the flamingo pen with all these big Diana looking things. It was a great show, and it was so interesting because I always enjoy seeing people at concerts enjoy themselves. I get a kick out of watching the audience as well. I enjoy the show, but I like watching the people. And because Diana Ross is 75, by the way, she sounded really great to be 75 and still looks really good as well. It's enjoyable to watch an older audience enjoy a show. Most of the shows I go to, the audiences are younger. So this whole crowd was all over the age of 50. And these folks was in there just getting down. And there was this Asian lady in the front row in the far right left. She bought a ticket just by herself. And I was like, okay, all right. They were in there just cutting up. Them old, because I like seeing older people have a good time, because it was like watching them relive 30, 40 years ago. And then there were people in there crying and stuff. And I'm used to seeing that at, some of the shows I go to for some of my favorite artists. If I go and see, a Janet or something, there's going to be people that sometimes cry in the audience because they're just so happy that they're in front of their favorite person. But you forget that even when people are in their 50s and 60s and 70s, they still have that same connection to music. So it was really cool to see just the impact and how, music really does carry across generations. And you forget that sometimes just because you weren't around to experience an era, doesn't mean that era wasn't impactful, which is why I always keep trying to tell people we have to get out of the habit of trying to erase the legacy of some in order to uplift the legacy and accomplishments of those who are current or those who are in the now. But it was a really fun show to watch. So I'm glad I've seen her. I was so pissed because Shaka Khan was just here and I didn't even get to go because I had rehearsal for something else, and it was a free show. So I got to see Shaka. I have not seen Charlie Wilson. I need to see him. Who else have I not seen? There's some good ones that I need to catch and go see, but those are the two right now. Uncle Charlie. I need to see Uncle Charlie. I need to see Shaka. All right. Anyway, share your 2 cents on everything. Again, condolences to everybody who's just been suffering through any kind of hardship, any kind of setback, anything that's just anybody going through anything that just messes up their Monday and their Tuesday and the rest of their week. You know what I mean? It seems like a lot of people are really hurting. And so just best wishes out there. Put some love out there in the air for everybody. It's been a rough little few weeks for some people. But anyway, we'll catch up again. So I'm out. Subscribe, share your 2 cents.
We reached that point again, and there's no questioning. There's no other feeling better than this. You're special, don't you ever change a thing. Don't change a thing, my blooming flower. We have no sense of time.